This journey sees me immersing myself in the cultures, beauty and turquoise waters of some of the most beautiful islands in the Pacific. But like raw diamonds in a glittering ocean, their past reveals some flaws of natural disasters and becoming accidental hosts to war. But as I soon found out, none of this has dampened their Pacific spirit.
3 hours from Brisbane's International Airport are the Solomon Islands, which have been described as the islands lost in time. This is a land of native villages, island smiles and miles of deserted beaches.
The Solomon Islands remain today the best kept secret in the South Pacific. With shark callers, war wreckage and gold, every Pacific race is present. From Papuans to Melanesians, Micronesians and Polynesians. The variety of customs is striking and the traditional ways are remarkably alive. And all in a subsistence culture. Like the neighbouring Vanuatu archipelago, it's a land of contrast and adventure, with mighty volcanoes, crashing waterfalls, mist-enshrouded rainforests, and brilliant coral reefs. No other Pacific island group has a greater diversity of landforms. And diversity, beauty, and history are what I'm after on this trip. The Solomons has a lot to show me, especially under the water. Later I'll be diving for the abundance of World War II sunken relics, even trying out the pilot's seat. Then I'll check out that Pacific spirit as it fights back to a normal life following a devastating volcanic disaster in Rabaul. And then it's on to the Lachlan Islands off Papua New Guinea to really get the Pacific spirit. With a total population of 300,000, there are very few cities, and most people still live a very basic life in the villages. Visiting them offers an insight into the lives of the Solomon Islanders and their passionate faith in the spiritual world, which you see in their local carvings in many types of wood.
This is the tranquil setting of Duday village, located on the shores of the beautiful Roviana Lagoon in Munda in the Solomon Islands. I am at the home of Falatau Leve, who is a local woodcarver, artist and medicine man. It is said these people through generations hold the power of a million eyes.
Of all the Western Province, Roviana was the most feared for headhunting. War canoes carried carved figureheads called nuzu nuzu on their prows in the shape of a dog with either a skull or a dove in its paws, depending on the intention of the mission. Like his father and grandfather, Falatau Leve is carrying on the tradition of wood carving. This war canoe was last used in battle 100 years ago, but today is preserved for education. The shark is a popular figure here because it's believed that the soul of a successful fisherman is reincarnated in a shark. So many place names, and even those sacred and revered, are named after the feared but vulnerable shark.
We're at Doki Doki Cave, which is in the Roviana Lagoon in the Solomon Islands. I have with me Leslie Levy, who is actually the one that found this cave.
It goes through on the outside of this island. It takes you about 10 minutes to go through this cave and come out to the wall on the outside of the island.
Glad I've got you as a tour guide.
The unusually named Custom Shark Cave runs through Doki Doki Island on the edge of Roviana Lagoon. Locals give various accounts of legends surrounding the cave of the Custom Shark. Each village has a shark to protect it, and this cave is the home of one such beast. The walls of the cavern were rippled with limestone. They narrowed, and we were in a vertical slit like a wall on either side, just enough room for our shoulders to fit. The cave bottomed at about 30 metres. In the distance, an eerie glow of blue was the light at the end of the tunnel. It's hard to describe entering a cave from a freshwater pool in the middle of an island and swimming right through the island to burst out onto a reef wall. Magnificent sea fans laced our exit. I felt like taking a bow as I emerged through these stylish natural curtains. Our confined world opened up and we were suspended in crystal clear waters, staring down at the massive drop-off and a perfect tropical reef wall. Coming next on Roar of the Wild, the silenced weapons, now relics of war in all their watery glory. If it weren't for the almost countless war machinery, which can be found scattered amongst the shallow reefs and deep harbours throughout this island nation, it would be hard to believe that the Solomons were once the site of fierce fighting. Here I am in Rendovo Lagoon, and at 12 metres, Lieutenant Doherty's Douglas dive bomber lies where it was felled by Japanese shore guns during a raid in 1943. He managed to fly the damaged plane to Rendovo Island, which had been secured by US troops 2 days before.
Although the islands seem quiet enough now, during World War II this was a scene of bitter fighting. Many planes and ships met their watery fate throughout these islands, and it is these wrecks, along with the spectacular reefs, that make the Solomon Islands a fascinating place to dive.
Above and below the water, evidence and tributes to the great and terrible Pacific War can be found everywhere here. Japan occupied most of the Solomons during World War II, and heavy fighting occurred in the region, none more so than on and around the island of Guadalcanal, where nearly 24,000 Japanese died in a 7-month period. When in the Solomons, this relatively recent history is hard to ignore. I hopped a plane to see more of the sunken wall memories. This time, it was the Benigi Wrecks 1 and 2. Just west of the Cochabamba, in early November 1942, several Japanese transports ran aground attempting to resupply Japanese forces at Guadalcanal. Landing near to the American positions at Lunga Point, they came under fire and 2 transports were destroyed. Benigi 1, as it's known, is the final resting ground of the Hirakawa Maru. Second World War came to the Solomons like a nightmare. The historic naval battles between Japanese and Allied soldiers are well documented, but little is known about the impact of 20th century warfare on the local population. Not even this paradise was immune. More than 50 years later, the remains of the battles are still scattered around the seafloor and the forests. For divers, there's the double fascination of visiting these historic sites. Nature continually turning tragedy into new life and opportunities. Benigi 2 is also easily accessible. With her bow exposed, she lies with the stern at around 27 metres. The sea is not done punishing her yet. An earthquake in 1977 collapsed the entire bridge area. An amazing variety of sea life now call this wreck home. The number of World War II naval wrecks in the waters of Iron Bottom Sound are testament to the ferocity and destructive power of battle. But there was still more to see. On the island of Gizo is the capital Gizo, which is confusing, but a great market town full of life. It's the second largest town in the Solomon Islands. A 20-minute boat ride from Gizo is one of the South Pacific's most popular diveable World War II shipwrecks off Kennedy Island. Here is an excellent balance of wreck and reef diving. On the wreck side, the fully intact Toru Maru, a 450-foot freighter, is still loaded with artefacts. The sea had certainly claimed this prize to build a new life on. She now lies on her starboard side, filled with sake bottles, small jars and gas masks. Even cooking woks in the kitchen are among the debris. Now I've got plenty of water, I just need some rice. The larger objects include bombs, a motorbike and even Type 21 tank. But reef-wise, the most memorable dive for me is bustling Central Station. On a good day, you'll see more action here than on a dozen dive sites in most other destinations. The most northwestern tip of the Gizo Islands is the merge point for oceanic currents, and it's here where the fish life, big and small, is at its best. Large soft corals and fans adorn the walls, while the waters are patrolled by sharks, trevally and batfish.
Although the mood of these islands is now tranquil, it was just over 50 years ago that it was a scene of war. During World War II, a bit of fighting took place around all these islands, and it was this island that John F. Kennedy swam to after his PT boat was sunk, just off the shore. It is now referred to as JFK Island.
And with a final feast night of music and dancing, I now leave the beautiful Solomon Islands and its happy people. Next up, the re-emerging beauty of volcanic-ravaged Rabaul. Part of the Pacific Rim of Fire, Rabaul is located on the Gizo Peninsula at the northern tip of the island of New Britain, which forms a part of the independent nation of Papua New Guinea. Another idyllic Pacific island touched by World War II, Rabaul was converted into a fortress by the Japanese for the planned expansion onto the mainland New Guinea, Papua, the Solomons and Australia. Major actions including the Kokoda Trail, Coral Sea Battle and Guadalcanal were all launched and supplied from Rabaul. At its height, the fortress of Rabaul had 5 airstrips, a submarine base, many naval vessels and thousands of Japanese armed personnel. It was also here that Admiral Yamamoto, the Japanese admiral who planned the attack on Pearl Harbor, was temporarily based. Even though this was a trying and horrific time for the locals, it pales against the true fury of the events of 1994.
Rabaul was once one of the most beautiful cities in Papua New Guinea. What you see here is the aftermath of a huge volcanic eruption. Meters of lava, ash and mud flowed down this valley, covering everything in its path.
The 2 sentinels that are Mounts Vulcan and Tuvuvu brood silently over the coastal port of Rabaul. The town, once nestled quietly in Simpson Harbour, was often described as the most beautiful town in the country. Cocoa, balsa wood and coconut plantations abound, and the rainforest is thick and green. Volcanic ash is very fertile. There had been other and regular earthquakes and eruptions, but no one expected this.
Although the people of Rabaul always knew that the volcano was a threat, when it finally blew, they were caught by surprise, and there was very little that they could do. This sparked a massive evacuation of up to 60,000 people from this area.
On the morning of September 19, 1994, the 2 volcanic cones began erupting on the opposite side of the harbour from the town. Ash fell all over the town, as deep as 2 feet. Heavy rains then turned the ash into mud that finally dried as hard as cement. The roofs of many buildings collapsed from the weight of the ash. As you can see, people abandoned everything. 60,000 people evacuated Rabaul. Amazingly, only 5 people died. 4 from collapses of roofs, and 1 person was struck by lightning. I guess, living this close to a volcano, the people were ready for an eruption. Since the 1994 eruption, businesses and airports have been relocated, and life has returned, although there is still plenty of evidence of the devastation.
This area has a long history of volcanic activity. Here we have a German railway, which dates back to the turn of the century. It was covered by volcanic ash, and has only just recently been uncovered by the latest volcanic eruption.
The purpose of the Rabaul tramways was to facilitate the transport of goods to the German business houses.
During World War II, there are over 100,000 Japanese stationed in Rabaul. They built over 500 kilometres of tunnels. In this particular tunnel, there are 5 Japanese landing barges, which were transported to the water by a small railway.
At Submarine Base, where Japanese submarines once sheltered, you can snorkel only metres from the shore to view where the reef suddenly plummets to cavernous depths. But there's so much more here. Less than 50 metres from the mainland coastline is George's Wreck, a Japanese cable layer converted to a minesweeper. The vessel is upright with an abundance of resident marine life around the bridge at 35 metres. This wreck is very well preserved and encrusted in vibrantly coloured coral throughout. A sensational dive. Pete's plane is a Japanese Mitsubishi biplane which lies in 30 metres and is frequented by a curious moray eel amongst other marine life. Sponges and soft corals have taken hold on the wings and tail section and sway in the current. Small Picasso triggerfish and cleaner shrimps were hiding under the edges of the fuselage. Yet another machine of war drowned, silenced and decorated by the sea. Another short boat hop and more was to be revealed. This one was found by Frank, the skipper of our boat. Discovered in the early 1990s by the MV Manta, 2 Type 97 tanks are in 4 metres of water, as well as the remains of a landing barge. It's speculated that they were lost during an unsuccessful unloading. They were armoured against bullets and blasts, but no match for an unrelenting ocean and time. There are of course many more spectacular reef dives, all of which are accessible in clear tropical waters. Such is the abundance of pristine and healthy marine life that new spectacular dive sites are constantly being discovered throughout the area, an area recovering from both natural and man-made disasters. Coming next, another group of islands and that relaxed way of life, this time in the Lachlan Island group. I am at Booty Booty Island, which is one of the 7 islands of the Lachlan Island group in the eastern part of New Guinea. Part of the Lachlan Islands, its relative isolation has meant many aspects of the local traditional way of life have been preserved. The economy here is what the West would describe as subsistence economy, though I think more appropriate words would be take each day as it comes, living in paradise. Nature provides the island people with all their needs. Here on Booty Booty, the village is located right on the beach. The houses are always built on stilts and are of course constructed entirely of local material, timber, bamboo and thatched sago palm leaves. Booty Booty Island is so remote, there's no point in having a motor here because you can't get fuel. The islanders still have to get to their gardens and go fishing, so they rely on the water and going by canoe. These wonderful canoes are the main means of transport between islands. They're mostly dugouts, often carved from a single tree. They can be thought of as the family car, they're taxis and a vital link in gathering and transporting food. The young men freedive with their Hawaiian sling-type spears and take just enough for what they need for a day. Meanwhile, I was content to sit in the sun on the surface and bail. So we don't sink. We were greeted by a small but enthusiastic welcoming committee. Then it was prepare the fish and plenty of other chores that fill the days of the villagers beside crystal turquoise waters. I asked to go out in the canoes again and try my own hand at catching dinner. This time it was clams. I also got the grand tour of the island and tried my hand at sailing, though I think it was more for the amusement of my fellow shipmates. Let's see how I go at trading.
What have you got? How many crayfish have you got? 2. You got one little one? And one very big one. Oh, look at that. What would you like to trade? Truce. What truce? And sewing cotton. And some sewing cotton. A needle? Yeah, needle. Fresh crayfish.
To say the locals are born to the water is an understatement. It is their work, their food provider, and their recreation from day one. Just like us, many of these people have pets, and they love birds. They'll catch a young chick at a very young age and they'll keep it with them for their whole lives. Just like this guy, a young booby bird. Hello. I got very close to many of these pets. Somewhere in here is a little rainbow lorikeet. He's just really young, but he thinks of his mommy. Come here. The villagers are preparing for a feast. and it seems everyone has a job to do. There's the feast platform to be built. But it's all hard work. The boys are up climbing the trees, and for a bit of a break we get to drink coconut. Army, is that coconut for me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hard work. Cheers. Nothing better. I'm given the honour of a laurel wreath. We're all having so much fun, I couldn't help myself. Okay, go! While the men are busy building, the women make grass skirts for the Sing Sing. They're dried, they're meticulously threaded together. The children look so sweet in their skirts, I just had to get my own, though it was a little short.
It's a mini skirt.
Little hearts. Then it was morning tea with the ladies, a little feast in itself. The journey to Papua New Guinea and its islands was filled with unexpected pleasures, where friendly people and beautiful children live on the bone-white sands under a blazing hot sun, where dolphins somersault for the sheer fun of it, and even the crabs climb trees. In life these days, we think of so many things like fast cars, big cities, and rush, rush, rush as a part of a normal life. But there's still places in this world where that is not the norm. Places like here, the Lachlan Islands, where life is just as it should be. Simple, and you do what you need to survive. And as the sunset stained the ocean red, I felt I was about due for another feast, where the fire-lit faces of smiling children match perfectly with the soft singing of these very welcoming people. Truly, people with that Pacific spirit.